Hi, I'm Ellen. If this is your first time here, welcome. And if you're returning, I'm truly glad you came back. If hard work alone guaranteed promotions, introverts would run every company by now. But I learned this the hard way. When I got passed over for a promotion I thought was practically guaranteed. I'd spent 2 years delivering every project on time and under budget. My performance reviews were consistently outstanding. My manager called my work exceptional, and my strategic thinking invaluable. I'd even been asked to mentor new hires because of my expertise. So when the senior analyst position opened up, a role I'd essentially been doing for months, I assumed it was a formality. Instead, it went to someone who'd been there half as long. Someone whose projects I'd actually helped fix behind the scenes. Someone whose main qualification seemed to be that everyone knew his name. The feedback from HR was devastating in its vagueness. We went with someone who demonstrated more leadership presence. I sat in my car after that meeting, staring at 2 years' worth of excellent performance reviews, wondering what invisible standard I'd somehow failed to meet. Have you ever felt this way? Like you're playing a game where everyone else knows the rules except you? That rejection sent me down a research spiral that changed everything I thought I knew about career advancement. I discovered something that should have been obvious, but felt revolutionary. Promotion decisions aren't just about performance. They're about perceived leadership potential. And that perception, it gets formed through very specific factors that nobody had ever explained to me. Factors that had nothing to do with how well I actually did my job, but everything to do with how visible that job was. I started analyzing colleagues who had advanced successfully, and I found a pattern. It wasn't that they were more competent. Often, they were less technically skilled than the people who got passed over. But they were more visible. Decision makers could easily articulate their contributions, their leadership style, and their potential impact at the next level. Meanwhile, those of us doing exceptional work in the background, the introverts who prefer delivering results to promoting them, we were essentially invisible. Invisible to the people making advancement decisions. We'd fallen into what I call the competence trap, believing that exceptional work would naturally be recognized and rewarded. But exceptional work that goes unnoticed might as well not exist when promotion committees meet. I realized I'd been operating under a myth that many introverts believe, that good work speaks for itself. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Good work whispers. And when you're naturally quiet about your achievements, those whispers get lost in all the organizational noise around you. The people getting promoted weren't necessarily doing better work. They were making their work more visible and easier to understand. They had advocates at senior levels who could speak to their leadership potential. They were seen as contributors to strategic discussions, not just executors of assigned tasks. I started tracking the invisible promotion criteria that nobody talks about. Do decision makers understand the full scope of your contributions? Can they articulate your leadership style? Do you have sponsors who advocate for your advancement? Are you perceived as someone who drives results or someone who gets results driven through them? These questions had nothing to do with competence and everything to do with positioning. I discovered that promotion decisions often happen in brief conversations. Tell me about Sarah's leadership potential. If the response is uncertain, Sarah doesn't advance, regardless of her capabilities. But if they can immediately say, Sarah led the retention initiative that saved us $200,000, and she's already thinking strategically about expansion, Sarah gets promoted. The difference isn't competence, it's clarity. of impact. Once I understood that promotion readiness was measurable and strategic, not just about working harder, everything changed. I started studying introverts who had successfully advanced to senior positions. They hadn't changed their fundamental nature, but they had learned to position their strengths strategically. They documented their achievements in ways that decision-makers could easily understand and remember. They built relationships with key stakeholders who could speak to their leadership potential. They created visibility around their strategic thinking, not just their execution abilities. Most importantly, they approached advancement as a strategic project with specific, measurable milestones, not as a passive reward for good performance. I learned to translate my work into business impact. Instead of managed quarterly reports, I documented streamlined reporting process, reducing preparation time by 40% while improving accuracy for strategic planning. I started building relationships with decision makers outside my immediate team, not through forced networking, but through strategic contribution to cross-departmental initiatives. I began positioning myself as someone who saw solutions, not just someone who executed tasks well. The relief was immense. This wasn't about my personality being wrong for leadership. This was about learning to translate my natural strengths into the language that promotion committees actually understand and value. My competence hadn't changed, but my positioning had transformed completely. 6 months later, when the next senior position opened, the conversation was different. This time, they could clearly articulate why I was ready for advancement. If you've ever felt confused about being passed over, despite excellent performance, you're not alone. If you've wondered what invisible standard you're failing to meet, if you've started questioning whether being an introvert is somehow holding you back, I want you to understand something crucial. Your competence isn't the problem. Your positioning is. The good news? Positioning is learnable, measurable, and completely within your control. That's why I created the Promotion Readiness Assessment, a diagnostic tool that reveals exactly where you stand on the invisible criteria that actually determine advancement decisions. It covers the 3 critical areas: visibility of your work, advocacy from key stakeholders, and influence beyond your direct role. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about strategically positioning who you already are so that decision makers can see your leadership potential clearly. The assessment will show you exactly which areas need attention and which are already strong. Because advancement isn't about becoming someone else. It's about making sure the right people understand who you already are. Download your free assessment using the link below. Be honest with your responses. This is about understanding your current positioning so you can strengthen it strategically. If you find gaps, don't worry. Every successful introvert leader started by identifying exactly where they needed to focus their advancement efforts. Your exceptional work deserves strategic positioning, and that positioning starts with understanding exactly where you are right now. Download the Promotion Readiness Assessment today and discover the specific steps that will transform your career trajectory. Because your competence has never been the question. It's time to make sure everyone else can see it clearly. Thanks for being here. I hope this helped, even in some small way. If it did, maybe stay with me a little longer. This next video might help even more.